I saw a documentary recently in which Tom Felton, the actor who played Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter films, explored the issue of superfans, people who are tremendously dedicated to film series, television shows, or certain actors. And his interest was apparently motivated by this woman that he kept seeing at various events seeking his autograph at different locations all over the world. He was the bad guy, or at least we thought he was the bad guy throughout the entire series and the original books, but Tom Felton as Draco Malfoy did in fact attract superfans, people who were tremendously dedicated to him and his career. And he said that it got a little bit scary at times, the way always seeing certain people. And as a matter of fact, he discussed that issue a little bit with Daniel Radcliffe, who has experienced some of the same thing, encountering the same people in different places all over the world. And Daniel was telling him how, there are a lot of people out there who don't know you, but they feel like they do, and they want to meet you and talk with you and collect all kinds of things concerning the film franchise or the TV series or whatever it is. Well, there are a lot of super fans of various film franchises and television shows and who follow particular actors. Trekkies are a real big one. I would describe myself as a big Star Trek fan. I don't know if I'll ever get to the point that I would be a super fan in the sense of just going completely, well, I know I wouldn't do that, just going completely overboard, but some people do. There are fans of Star Trek who do that. There are fans of the Harry Potter series who do that. And there are numerous fans who consider themselves super fans. And they'll dress up as their favorite characters, and they'll go to conventions, and they'll do all kinds of things to display their devotion to particular actors, to particular series, and particular television shows. Star Trek conventions have been going on since the 1970s. And is still an extremely popular franchise. Star Trek Beyond has been a bit of a disappointment at the box office, in spite of the fact that it was a very good film. I mean, I thought it was a fine film, but it was a little bit of a disappointment, and there's now some concern that it could possibly be the end of the franchise, which has continued for 50 years. Up until this year anyway, but there's still legions of fans who maybe didn't go out and support the film. They should have if they wanted things to continue probably, but they go to conventions, they dress as characters, they try to meet characters, they participate in panel discussions with characters, and so Star Trek fandom actually does continue in spite of the fact that the franchise hit a bump in the road. Harry Potter also was one of the most famous, beloved book series ever, and where the movies were as well. The movies were just fantastic, by the way. I thought they were supremely well cast, well directed. The scenery in Scotland, the music by John Williams and others. They had some great directors. They had the three primary actors, Daniel, Emma, Rupert, and then they had outstanding people like Richard Harris and Michael Gambon, the two who played Professor Dumbledore, Alec Rickman as Professor Snape. We don't like to talk about him too much, but Ralph Fiennes as Lord Voldemort, a really evil character, but he played that extremely evil character very well. There was Robbie Coltrane as Rubeus Hagrid, and various other people in the Harry Potter series who it was just an extremely well cast group of people, and I don't think they could have cast those films any better than they did. But what is it actually that motivates super fans, people who are extremely dedicated to various film series, characters, movies, and so forth? Well, I think there are three basic factors motivating super fans. For one thing, they love the storyline. They really get into the storyline, and they just love what the whole thing is all about. In the case of Star Trek, it's about, and a lot of people don't realize this, if you've never actually gotten into that franchise and paid a lot of attention to the TV series and watched the movies, a lot of people don't understand that the basic idea is about a hopeful future for humanity. And we live in a world in which we often question whether there is going to be a hopeful future for humanity. We appear to face problems that just seem absolutely hopeless, and nobody has the will to deal with them, and that grinding poverty is just going to be a problem forever. But in Star Trek, you see that humanity survives and thrives and does extremely well. And it's a society, the Federation is, where poverty has been completely eliminated, and many forms of prejudice have been eliminated as well, and everybody is free to pursue their life goals and to reach their potential, and they don't have to worry about slaving away in some ridiculously low-paying job and struggling to get by. There's plenty for everybody. Everybody has enough. And it can't be, strictly speaking, a capitalist system, because you would never, ever get to that kind of prosperity with a capitalistic system. It just doesn't work that way. There's too much exploitation involved. Nor would I think a communistic society achieve that either. It would be a third way or something brand new to ever achieve that. But that's the appeal of Star Trek. It is the hopeful future for humanity, that humanity is united in a way that nobody ever thought possible, and lives in a peaceful federation with many, many other planets, and there's conflict between the Federation and other empires and so forth. But within the Federation, it's mostly peace and relative tranquility, and people are free to pursue their own potential, and there's no poverty. In the world of Harry Potter, it's ultimately about the battle between good and evil, the forces of darkness versus the force of light. And it's extremely compelling to read those books or watch those films. You find this poor little orphan boy who's living with a family who mistreats him, and he doesn't have a very good life at all. And then he's introduced to this new life in the wizarding world, and now he has a home, and he has friends, and he has people that care about him, and he's developing his talents with Quidditch, and he's becoming a very good wizard, and he has a place that he belongs, that he feels welcome. He even has a bit of a foster family in the Weasleys. And this Harry, it's impossible not to like Harry. He's an extremely good character, an extremely good person. Does he have flaws? Yes, he does. He sometimes gets a little bit too angry. He sometimes maybe is a little bit too easy on his opponents. I think maybe Peter Pettigrew, it would have been better off if he had allowed Lupin and Sirius Black to do away with him. But he didn't do that, and so I wonder if maybe that was a flaw. But in general, Harry is an extremely good person. He's a very loyal friend, and he's the protagonist in a battle between the evil Lord Voldemort. And ultimately, we get to see how good triumphs over evil and love wins out. And it's just a tremendous story. It's a tremendously life-affirming story. And then another thing is people really like, and in some cases identify with, the characters. And in the case of Star Trek, it's Kirk and Spock and Scotty and Dr. McCoy. Actually, the primary three, I guess you would say, the Troika, who are always together a lot, and it was ingenious the way they put Spock and Dr. McCoy working together in Star Trek Beyond. But, Kirk, Spock, and Dr. McCoy, and people really love those characters, and they love what they do in the films. And in the Harry Potter franchise, people obviously love Harry and Ron and Hermione. They just love those characters. So that's another aspect. And then another aspect is that they really like the way the actors portrayed the characters. In the Harry Potter film, nobody could have been better. I mean, Daniel Radcliffe was just absolutely the best choice to play Harry Potter. He was tremendous. He was fantastic. Rupert Grint as Ron Weasley. He was fantastic. Emma Watson as Hermione. She was great. And the perfection in the casting extended beyond the primary three too. Think of Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid, and Hagrid was just like in the book. And then there was Maggie Smith as Professor McGonagall, and Alan Rickman as Professor Snape, Richard Harris and Michael Gambon as the two versions of Dumbledore. And of course, Richard Harris died after the second film, so they had to recast the role with Michael Gambon. And so people loved the characters. Dumbledore, everybody loved Dumbledore too, but the characters were perfect for the role. And I think in the 1960s, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy were perfect for those roles. And then when you get to 2009 and there's the reboot, the new part of the franchise, then you have Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and Carl Urban as Dr. McCoy and Simon Pegg as Scotty, and those were very well cast too. So three things: people love the storylines, they identify with the storylines in a certain respect, they love the characters, and they think that the actors who played the characters did a fantastic job. But let's get back to the first point a little bit. It's the storylines. In the case, and I've only focused on Harry Potter and Star Trek here, but in the case of those storylines, we see worlds in which many of us actually wish that we could live. You know, we face a lot of problems and difficulties in life. Sometimes it's hard to keep the money coming in, and you wonder how you're going to pay the bills, and you wonder about, you know, kids' education, and you concern yourself about health care, and then there's house payments, and then there's rent, and then there's business problems and work problems and obligations, and all these mundane problems that just dog us all the time. And it's really frustrating, aggravating, and irritating. And then sometimes there are physical problems that we have to deal with, illnesses and so forth. We just wish all that could be gone. And so we see in the cases of franchises like Star Trek and Harry Potter, different views of the world that we would, to a certain extent, many of us anyway, wish we could live in that kind of world. You know, from my perspective, one thing, I mean, who wouldn't want to work on the Starship Enterprise with great, smart, well-educated colleagues who absolutely knew what they were doing and were extremely good what they were doing, and you had legitimate friendships among them, and everybody was very good what they did, and they got to work for a fantastic captain like Jean-Luc Picard, I mean, who was just the best in many ways. Who wouldn't want a situation like that? Or consider the world of Harry Potter. Now, a lot of bad things happen in the world of Harry Potter. It starts with the murder of James and Lily Potter, and then there are terrible things that happen. The Chamber of Secrets is really pretty scary, where Harry has to go confront that huge snake and run into Lord Voldemort himself. And then the Prisoner of Azkaban, they have to go through some very dangerous doings to save the life of Sirius Black, who is about to receive the Dementor's kiss and have his soul sucked out. And so that's a really hard thing to go through. And then a lot of bad things happen in the Goblet of Fire, where Harry is kidnapped by this use of a portkey. He and Cedric Diggory are basically kidnapped and transported, and then Harry is kind of tortured for a while after Cedric Diggory is murdered, and a lot of bad things happen in the Harry Potter books. But a lot of us can look at those things and think, you know, it would be worth everything that they went through to live in that kind of world compared to the kind of world that we live in. And so I think one of the motivations behind superfans, they love the characters, they love the storylines, and they love the way the actors portray the characters, is that we see versions of a world that we kind of wish that we could live in. That we wish things in the real world were really like they are in the Star Trek world or in the Harry Potter world. And that, I think, is the driving force that motivates superfans. Now, I'm a big fan of both of those franchises. I don't think I'll ever cross the line and become one of those super fans, because to me that's a little bit extreme. However, given what I've just discussed, I do understand their devotion. And if people go a little bit overboard at times, there is still some rationale behind that. So that is my take on the interesting and intriguing world of superfans. Thanks and have a good day.